The champagne flutes were filled with Dom Perignon, a pale gold liquid that mirrored the dying light of the Manhattan sunset. It was my 50th birthday, a celebration not just of years, but of absolute power. The marble terrace of my Long Island estate was a tableau of the city's elite, senators, titans of industry, and the most powerful families of the 5 boroughs, all gathered under the watchful eye of my security team. I was Lorenzo, the enforcer, Moretti, and for 2 decades, I had held the underworld in an iron fist, my empire built on a foundation of unshakable loyalty and ruthless efficiency. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the buzz of insincere flattery. My fiancée, Valentina, was draped across my arm, her smile a glittering mask that concealed a cold heart. Her father, Senator Alderman, was deep in conversation with my trusted underboss, Marco, near the fountain. It was a perfect scene of curated power. But something was wrong. I felt it in the marrow of my bones, a chilling premonition that the opulence around me was a mere veneer over a precipice. My instincts, honed over a lifetime of survival, were screaming. My security team was too still, their eyes not scanning the crowd, but fixed on their earpieces, a subtle rigidity in their posture that spoke of something other than vigilance. They weren't protecting me from external threats. They were waiting for a command. I was about to signal my personal guard, Enzo, to sweep the perimeter again, when a small, trembling hand tugged at the sleeve of my Brioni suit. I looked down, startled. It was Mia, the 2-year-old daughter of Rosa, my housekeeper. Rosa had been with me for 5 years, a widow who worked tirelessly, her life revolving around her daughter's burgeoning world. I often saw them in the quiet hours of the morning, Rosa polishing the silver while Mia helped by stacking napkins, her small face a picture of concentration. They were the only truly innocent souls in my life, untouched by the corruption that seeped through the walls of my home. Now, Mia's face was pale, her large brown eyes wide with a primal fear that instantly cut through the din of the party. She didn't speak in the way other children did. Rosa had confided in me that Mia was selectively mute, traumatized by the sudden, violent death of her father 2 years ago. She communicated through whispers only to her mother, and through a deep, intuitive understanding of the world that was terrifyingly mature for her age. "Ello Lorenzo," she stammered, her voice a ghost of a sound. She was the only person in the world who called me by my first name, and it always pulled at a part of me I thought had calcified long ago. I knelt down to her level, the power broker of New York kneeling on the marble floor for a housekeeper's toddler. My security team tensed, but a single, sharp look from me put them back in their places. "What is it, little one?" I asked, my voice softening to a tone I reserved for no one else. She reached up and pulled my head closer, her tiny, cold fingers gripping my ear. She had always been unnervingly perceptive, a silent observer who saw what others missed. Then, her whisper, so soft it was almost lost to the wind, but for me, it was as loud as a gunshot. "The bomb," she breathed. "It's sleeping under the table. The one with the white flowers." My blood ran to ice. I looked past her, to the center of the terrace, where a grand table was adorned with a stunning centerpiece of white lilies and orchids. It was the dessert table, and the guests were beginning to gravitate towards it. I didn't question her. I didn't ask how she knew. I had seen the world's most hardened soldiers miss details that this child would spot from across a room. Her fear was absolute, visceral, and I believed it with every fiber of my being. "Enzo," I said, my voice low and sharp, a complete departure from the warm tone I'd just used. "Clear the terrace. Now." Quietly. "Tell them it's a gas leak." I lifted Mia into my arms, her small body trembling against my chest. As Enzo began to discreetly usher the guests inside, I scanned the faces of my supposed allies. I saw the flicker of panic in Marco's eyes before he could mask it. I saw Valentina's hand tighten on her father's arm, a gesture of anxious tension, not of fear for my safety. The instinct was confirmed. This was not an external attack. This was a betrayal from within my own house, a conspiracy I had unknowingly nurtured. As the last guests were herded into the safety of the mansion, I heard a muffled sound, like a heavy door sealing shut. I turned back to the terrace and felt a tremor run through the marble floor, followed by a low, terrible roar that seemed to suck the air from the world. The center of the terrace, where the beautiful table of white flowers had stood, erupted in a geyser of flame and shattered stone, a violent punctuation mark to a night that was supposed to celebrate my reign. My empire had just declared war on me. The blast had been catastrophic, but Enzo's swift actions had saved countless lives. The mansion was a fortress, and the blast had been contained to the terrace, but the damage was symbolic. My world had been breached. The front of my home was a smoking ruin, a shattered monument to my lost control. Inside the panic room, I stood watching the security feeds on a bank of monitors. The guests were in hysterics, huddled in the main ballroom under armed guard. Valentina was performing her role flawlessly, the terrified, traumatized fiancé. But my eyes were on Marco, who was barking orders, his face a mask of manufactured concern. I saw him look at his watch, a small, furtive gesture. He was checking the time, counting down to something else. Beside me, Rosa was on her knees, clutching Mia, who had slipped into a silent, catatonic state. I knelt beside her, the urge to protect them, to repay the debt of the whispered warning that saved my life, a physical force. "Thank you," I said to Rosa, my voice hoarse. She is why I am alive." Rosa looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes hard. "She sees things," she whispered, her voice shaking. "She knew her father was in danger that night, Lorenzo. She told me she said the bad men were coming. I didn't listen. I told her it was her imagination. I failed him. I won't fail you." The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. The 2-year-old had known. The night her father died, a seemingly random drive-by in a bad part of town, she had sensed the danger. It wasn't a childish fear, it was a premonition. "No, Rosa," I said, my resolve hardening into something cold and diamond-sharp. "You didn't fail him. I failed to protect my own. But I will not fail you or her.
Not now.
Not ever." I turned back to the monitors and brought up a separate, encrypted feed, the interior of the panic room where my most trusted lieutenants were supposed to be gathering. Instead, I saw Marco. He was on a secure phone, his voice low and venomous. "The bomb failed," he hissed into the receiver. "Lorenzo is alive. The plan is compromised, but the backup is in place. We have the boy from the Rossetti family, his other assets. We need to accelerate. My men have control of the main gate and the communications room. He's trapped." My blood boiled. The Rossetti family. Johnny Rossetti, an old rival I had defeated and showed mercy to. I had taken his son, Matteo, as a guest to ensure his father's good behavior. I had treated the boy like a prince, giving him tutors and every comfort, a promise that his safety was assured. A hollow promise, I now realized. My mercy had been my weakness. I saw Marco's face on the monitor, smug and triumphant. He walked out of the panic room and towards the main ballroom. The fuse was lit. He was going to make his move. "Enzo, seal the panic room," I commanded into the secure channel. "No one goes in, no one comes out. I'm going to give my guests a show." I emerged from the panic room, a ghost in my own house. I moved through the servants' passageways, the hidden arteries of my home that I had built for emergencies just like this. I could hear Marco's voice, amplified, booming through the ballroom's sound system. "Ladies and gentlemen, please do not be alarmed," he said, his voice slick with false concern. "Your host, Lorenzo Moretti, was injured in the blast. He is currently receiving medical attention and will not be able to join us. I am now in charge, and I assure you, you are all safe." A lie. A masterstroke of treachery. He was declaring himself the new head of the family in front of the entire city. I crept to a vantage point overlooking the ballroom from a second-floor balcony. I saw the guests, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. I saw Valentina standing by Marco's side, her hand on his arm. The betrayal was a dagger in my heart, but it was the final piece of the puzzle. They were in this together. I saw Rosa and Mia being herded into the ballroom by 2 of Marco's men. Rosa was holding Mia in her arms, shielding her eyes from the chaos. The sight of them, dragged into the snake pit, ignited a rage so pure and white-hot it consumed the last vestiges of my humanity. I would show them no mercy.
Not now.
Not ever. As Marco finished his speech, the main doors to the ballroom burst open. A group of armed men, not my men, but Johnny Rossetti's, entered the room. They flanked a young boy, Matteo, his face pale with terror. He was the leverage. "The boy is safe," Marco announced to the crowd, a cruel smile twisting his face. "He is proof of Lorenzo's tyranny. And now, he will be freed, as a new era begins." The corruption of my life was laid bare before me. My trusted lieutenants were traitors. My fiancé was a viper. My enemies were using my own mercy as their weapon. They had taken my legacy, my home, and were about to take my life, but they had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the one thing that had kept me alive for 5 decades, my will to survive. And they had forgotten the silent, powerful prophecy of a 2-year-old girl who had already seen the coming darkness. My retribution would be absolute. As Marco and Valentina reveled in their treacherous coup, I retreated deeper into the labyrinth of my mansion's secret passages. I had a network of tunnels and safe rooms built for a scenario exactly like this. They had taken the ballroom, but they didn't know this house like I did. They didn't know its secrets. My first priority was not to confront Marco, not yet. It was to ensure the safety of the one soul who had warned me. I found Rosa and Mia in a small, hidden servants' pantry, guarded by 2 of my own men who had managed to evade Marco's purge. They had been cornered, waiting for a moment to escape. I entered the room, my face a stone mask. Rosa looked up, her eyes wide with a desperate hope. Mia was curled in a corner, her thumb in her mouth, her eyes staring vacantly at the wall. "Enzo is taking control of the security grid," I told Rosa, my voice a low rumble. "We need to move you to the bunker. It's a mile from here, through the tunnels. You'll be safe until I can end this." "The child saw it," Rosa said, her voice trembling. "She told me she saw you standing in a room of glass, and there was a man with a scar on his face. He was going to hurt you." A man with a scar. Johnny Rossetti had a deep scar across his left cheek, a souvenir from the night I took Matteo. The information was chilling. It wasn't just a bomb. It was a full-scale, premeditated attack orchestrated by 2 of my biggest enemies. The Rossetti and the Alderman families had merged, using Valentina as their Trojan horse and Marco as the disloyal general. "Rosa, you are a remarkable woman," I said, my eyes looking past her to the catatonic girl. "And your daughter, she is something else. A seer. A daughter of the old country's witches."
Rosa flinched.
"It's a curse, not a gift. It drove her father to drink. He couldn't handle the things she knew. He thought she was possessed. He would beat her to make the demons go away." My heart clenched. The pieces of a tragic puzzle fell into place. The violent father, the mute daughter, the drive-by that had taken his life. Perhaps it was not a random act of gang violence, but a mercy killing of a different kind, a tragedy that had been waiting to happen. "It is not a curse," I said firmly. "It is a gift, one that she will use to protect those she loves. She saved my life tonight, and I will repay that debt with the lives of every person who conspired against me." I then made a decision that would define the rest of my life. I opened a hidden panel and retrieved a small, ornate locket on a silver chain. It contained a photo of my own mother, a woman I never knew, who died giving birth to me. I had never shown it to anyone, but I handed it to Rosa. "She will be my ward," I said. "She will be my family. She will want for nothing. And when she is ready, she will speak to me." For the first time, Mia's eyes flickered. She looked from her mother's face to the locket in her hands, and then to me. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. It was a promise. I turned my attention back to the monitors. The situation was escalating. Marco had Valentina and Matteo on the main ballroom stage. The broadcast was being sent out to every criminal organization in the city. He was officially declaring the Moretti Empire dead. "My friends," Marco said into the microphone, his voice dripping with false piety, "Lorenzo Moretti is no more. A new era of cooperation and peace is upon us. This boy will be returned to his loving family. His safety was never in question. He was painting a picture of a benevolent new leader, a hero who had saved the captured boy from a tyrant. It was a masterful piece of propaganda. But I knew what came next. He would use the child's release as a bargaining chip. He would demand that the remnants of my organization lay down their arms, or the boy would be killed. It was the classic move of a coward who had never faced a real threat that I needed a piece of leverage. I needed to fracture their alliance. And I knew exactly where to strike: the senator. His public reputation was his only shield. His wealth and power were built on a facade of respectability. I accessed a different secure channel, one that led to the personal server of Senator Alderman. I had planted a program there years ago, a safety net for a rainy day. Today, it was a monsoon dot on the screen. I saw the senator's private office. I saw him, alone, a glass of scotch in his hand, watching the broadcast from the ballroom. He looked smug. He looked untouchable. I typed a single line of text. It appeared on his personal monitor, the one he thought was secure. "Daddy, remember the little girl from the St. Regis Hotel? The one who was never found." The senator went pale. His glass of scotch slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. He knew exactly what I was talking about. It was a ghost from his past, a secret he had buried deep. A secret that could destroy his career and his life. He stumbled back, his face a mask of pure terror. He reached for his phone, his hands shaking violently. But I had already cut his lines. He was isolated. He was exposed. The first crack in their alliance had appeared. And it was just the beginning. I was not just going to reclaim my empire. I was going to dismantle theirs, piece by piece, starting with the most fragile of them all, their fragile egos. The mansion was a fortress under siege, but the real battle was being fought in the shadows. While Marco and Valentina celebrated their hollow victory, I was dismantling their carefully constructed illusion from the inside out. From the bowels of my secret bunker, I accessed the satellite network I'd built over the years. I watched the senator scramble, trying to call his allies, only to find his lines dead. His face, contorted with panic, was a beautiful sight. My first move was to release the footage. Not of the explosion, but of Senator Alderman's private meeting with Johnny Rossetti, the very same meeting where they plotted my assassination. It was grainy, but it was damning. A senator conspiring with a known crime lord. The public would devour it. I sent it to every major news outlet in the city, using a series of untraceable servers. The media would be baying for his blood within the hour. The political pillar of their alliance was about to crumble. My next target was the financial foundation. Marco had always been the treasurer of my operations. He had access to the family's accounts. But he didn't have access to the hidden accounts, the ones I had in offshore havens under the names of shell companies. The money he thought he was stealing was a fraction of my true wealth. I initiated a series of complex financial transfers, bleeding the visible accounts dry. The funds Marco was so proudly displaying on his own personal monitors were being siphoned away to trusts for Rosa and Mia, a safety net for my new family. Marco would wake up in the morning a millionaire, only to find the money had vanished into thin air. Finally, I turned my attention to the boy, Matteo Rossetti. He was the pawn, the innocent child used as a prop in this grotesque play. I activated a hidden comlink in his shoe, a device I had placed for emergencies. I watched his face change from terror to confusion as he heard my voice in his ear. "Matteo," I whispered, "do not be afraid. The man who is holding you is not your friend. When you see the lights flicker, I need you to run. Run to the back of the room, towards the red emergency exit. Your father sent me to get you." It was a lie, of course, but it was a necessary one. The poor boy needed hope. He needed a reason to survive. On the main stage, Marco was in his element. He was basking in the adulation of his new role, a man who had saved the city from my tyranny. "Lorenzo Moretti is a relic," he proclaimed, his voice thrumming with self-importance. "His reign of terror is over. We are now free to build a new future, a future of peace and prosperity." It was a speech I had heard 100 times from the mouths of men who had met their end at the hands of my associates. They always thought they were smarter, more ruthless, more cunning. They were always wrong. Suddenly, the lights in the ballroom flickered and died. A moment of panic, a collective gasp from the crowd. Then, the emergency lights kicked in, casting the room in an eerie red glow. It was the signal Mateo, a brave, terrified boy, broke free from his guard. He ran, just as I had instructed, towards the red exit. The guard, startled, reached for him, but I had already taken control of the sprinkler system. A torrent of water erupted from the ceiling, drenching everyone. It wasn't just water, it was fire suppression foam. Thick, white, blinding. The ballroom descended into chaos. Through the chaos, I saw Enzo and a small contingent of my loyal men move in. They were masked and dressed in the same tactical gear as Marco's men, allowing them to blend in. They grabbed Matteo and spirited him away before anyone could react. Marco was screaming, his voice lost in the chaos. Valentina was shrieking, her perfect dress ruined. Senator Alderman was crying, his career destroyed. The alliance was in shambles. I watched it all from my bunker, a silent, cold observer. It was the first act of a brutal symphony I was about to conduct. I was not content with simply saving the boy. I wanted more. I wanted to see their faces when they realized their world was a house of cards. I saw Marco regain some semblance of control. He was ordering his men to find the boy, to seal the exits. He was trying to salvage the situation. He was failing. I activated a final emergency protocol. A series of small, non-lethal flashbangs planted in the ventilation system detonated, sending blinding flashes of light and concussive bangs through the ballroom. The guests, already traumatized, were now screaming in absolute panic. They stampeded towards the exits, desperate to escape. In the confusion, I saw Rosa, Mia, and Matteo being led away by Enzo, the three most innocent souls caught in this inferno. They had made it. They were safe. Now, the game was truly on. The first gambit was complete. I had shattered their alliance and revealed their incompetence. But they still had one piece of leverage: the life of Johnny Rossetti's son. They thought the boy was still in their possession. They had no idea he was already hidden in the tunnels with Rosa and Mia. Marco's voice, tinny and furious, came over the PA system. "Bring me the boy. Now." He had lost control of the narrative. He had lost control of his hostage. And he was about to lose control of his own men, who were starting to realize the new boss was not as capable as he pretended to be. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. It was a cold, chilling smile that had no place on the face of a man who had just been betrayed. The flames of my revenge were just beginning to lick at their feet. The party was over. The mansion, once a symbol of my power, was now a crime scene, a twisted monument to my downfall. The guests had fled into the night, their terrified whispers spreading through the city like wildfire. The media was having a field day, speculating on the explosion at the Moretti estate and the disappearance of the crime lord. But I was not gone. I was merely in the shadows, observing, planning, and waiting. I had isolated each of my enemies, leaving them to stew in their own paranoia. Marco was in the panic room, his phone ringing off the hook. He was trying to contact Johnny Rossetti to explain that the boy had been lost. It was a conversation I was eager to hear. On my monitor, I could see his face growing paler, his voice more frantic. "The boy is gone, Johnny." The sprinklers went off. There was a stampede. I don't know what happened. A low, dangerous voice rumbled from the speaker. "You lost my son was the only reason I agreed to this alliance. If you have harmed a hair on his head, Marco, I will flay you alive and feed you to my dogs." The alliance was fracturing. The cracks were becoming chasms. Valentina was in her private suite, the one she had decorated with such exquisite taste. Now it looked like a gilded cage. She was pacing, her phone pressed to her ear. She was on the line with her father, the senator, who was in the middle of a political meltdown. "The footage is everywhere, Valentina. Every news channel is playing it on a loop.
I'm ruined.
My career is over. You've destroyed everything I've worked for. It was your idea, Daddy," she shrieked. "You told me to seduce him. You told me to get close to him and make him weak. This is your fault." They were turning on each other, a pack of rabid wolves devouring their own. It was a beautiful, tragic sight, and then there was the senator himself. I had a different monitor trained on his private study. He was in the process of shredding documents, his hands shaking so badly he could barely operate the machine. He was trying to erase his past, but he knew it was futile. I watched him take a bottle of scotch from his cabinet and pour himself a generous glass. He downed it in one gulp, then another, his face a mask of despair. He was my greatest asset, the key to unlocking the entire conspiracy. That I dialed his private number. It was the same one I had used earlier to send the damning message. He answered, his voice trembling. "Who is this, a ghost?" I said, my voice a low, menacing whisper. "I'm the ghost of the man you tried to kill, Senator. I'm the man who knows about your little secret. I'm the man who is the evidence that will send you to prison for the rest of your life." "Please," he begged, his voice cracking. "What do you want? Anything? Just name it." "I want you to call your daughter," I said. "I want you to tell her the truth. I want you to tell her that you sold her to me for a seat on the Senate subcommittee on organized crime. I want you to tell her that her entire life was a lie, a transaction you brokered to save your own worthless skin." There was a long, agonizing silence. Then a sob. "She won't believe me." "She will believe you," I said, "because I am going to give you 1 hour to prove your loyalty. You will call her, you will tell her the truth, and then you will record everything. The confession, the alliance with Johnny Rossetti, every single detail. If you do this, I will ensure your evidence is lost, and you are allowed to slink into the shadows and live out the rest of your pathetic existence in exile. And if I refuse, then the footage I have will be released to the Justice Department, and I'll make sure your grandchildren know exactly what kind of man their grandfather was. A killer, a traitor, a coward." He knew I was telling the truth. He knew I had the power to destroy him. He was defeated. The fight had gone out of him. He was a broken man. That he made the call. I listened to every painful, stilted word as he confessed to his daughter, a truth that she had never been able to accept. I listened to her initial denials, her accusations, and finally, her silence. The silence of a daughter learning that her entire life was a lie. The isolation was complete. Marco was cornered, Valentina was broken, and the senator was a puppet whose strings I now held. The 3 pillars of the conspiracy were crumbling, but I was not done. I hadn't even begun. I had dismantled their alliance, but I had not yet exacted my revenge. I was saving the best for last. I was saving them for the moment they would see me, alive and well, standing over their broken dreams. I had one more call to make. It was to Johnny Rossetti. He was the architect of my destruction, the man who had used my mercy as a weapon. "Johnny," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's Lorenzo. I have something of yours. And I want you to know, I'm not going to give him back. Not yet." "I'll find you," Johnny hissed. "I'll find you and I'll kill you, slowly and painfully. I'll make you watch as I kill everyone you love." "No, Johnny," I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. "You will come to me, and when you do, you will beg me to give you a quick death. That is my promise to you." I ended the call. The chessboard was set. The pieces were in play. The final act was about to begin. The hour of reckoning had arrived. I had sent the location to Johnny Rossetti, to Marco, and to Valentina. They would arrive separately, each carrying their own fears and their own desperate hopes. I had chosen the venue with care, the old Crystal Palace, a glass and steel exhibition hall on the waterfront that I had bought years ago and never used. It was a perfect stage for the final act of this tragic drama. I arrived first, standing in the center of the cavernous space, surrounded by miles of glass. The moonlight reflected off the panes, creating a million dancing shadows. It was a room of illusions, a fitting place to expose the truth. Enzo was stationed on the roof, a sniper rifle trained on the main entrance. My loyal men were hidden in the shadows, ready to strike at my command. The trap was set. Johnny was the first to arrive. He strode through the main entrance, flanked by 2 of his own bodyguards. He was a bull of a man, his scarred face twisted in a mask of rage, Where's my son? He demanded, his voice echoing in the vast space. He's safe, I said, my voice calm. He's in the other room, waiting for you. But before you see him, you need to understand something. You are not going to leave here alive, Johnny. You killed my men. You conspired to destroy my empire. You used a child as a pawn. For that, you will pay. You can't kill me, Lorenzo, he sneered. You're weak. You've always been weak. You showed me mercy, and that was your greatest mistake. You should have killed me when you had the chance. You're right, I said, my voice flat. I should have, but I'm not going to make that mistake again. I raised my hand, and a spotlight blazed to life, illuminating a figure standing on a balcony high above us. It was Marco. His hands were bound, his face bruised. He looked terrified. See, Johnny, I said, gesturing to my former underboss. I have your partner. He's been telling me all about your little plan. It was quite ingenious, really. Using the senator's daughter to get close to me, using the boy as leverage to ensure my silence. But you made one fatal mistake, Johnny. You underestimated me. The building shook with the sound of a helicopter approaching. I looked up and saw a sleek black chopper descending toward the roof. It was Valentina. She was making a dramatic entrance. She landed on the roof and stormed into the building, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She was wearing a black dress, her face a mask of cold fury. You think you've won, Lorenzo, she spat. You have nothing. Your empire is gone. Your men are dead. You are nothing without your money and your power. Valentina, I said, shaking my head.
You still don't understand.
The money, the power, the empire. None of it was ever the real prize. The real prize was loyalty.
Trust.
The unwavering belief that the people around you have your back. And you, my dear, have none of that. You're just a spoiled little rich girl who thought she could play with fire. You're wrong, she hissed. I have my father. I have my family name. I have everything I need. Do you? I asked, a cruel smile playing on my lips. Then why don't you call and go ahead? Call your father. Ask him if he'll welcome you back with open arms. I pulled out my phone and dialed the senator's number. I put it on speaker. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then it went to voicemail. Valentina's face went pale. He didn't answer. I said, you know why? Because he's gone. He's on a private jet to a country without an extradition treaty. He's abandoned you, Valentina. Just like he did to your mother. Just like he's done to everyone who ever loved him. You're lying, she screamed, her composure finally shattering. You're lying? I said, throwing my phone to her. Check his office. Check his bank accounts. The money is gone. The documents are shredded. He's vanished into thin air. She caught the phone and frantically checked her own messages. I saw her face crumble as she realized the truth. Her father, the pillar of her life, had abandoned her. Meanwhile, Marco was struggling against his bonds on the balcony, his pleas for mercy going unheard. Johnny was seething with rage, his hands clenching into fists. I'm going to kill you, Lorenzo, he snarled. I'm going to rip your heart out of your chest and feed it to my dogs. No, I said, shaking my head. You're not. You're going to go to prison. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell, thinking about this moment, about how you could have been a better man, a better father. But you chose greed and revenge instead. And now you'll pay the price. I raised my hand again, and the lights flickered. A door at the far end of the room swung open, and Rosa stepped out, leading Matteo by the hand. The boy was pale and terrified, but he was alive. See, Johnny, I said. He's safe. You wanted him back, and I'm giving him back. But not to you. To the authorities. They'll take him into protective custody, away from your influence. He'll have a chance to grow up without the shadow of his father's sins hanging over him. Johnny's face twisted in anguish. He lunged forward, but my men were faster. They subdued him, forcing him to his knees. It's over, Johnny, I said, my voice cold. You lost. I turned to Valentina, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. And you, I said, you're going to prison too. For conspiracy to commit murder, for aiding and abetting a criminal enterprise. Your father's wealth and influence won't save you now. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hatred. I hope you rot in hell, Lorenzo Moretti. Maybe I will, I said. But I'll rot there knowing that I did the right thing, that I protected the innocent, that I brought justice to the guilty.
Can you say the same?
The glass walls of the Crystal Palace reflected the moonlit chaos, 1,000 images of a fallen empire. I had won, but the victory felt hollow, a bitter pill to swallow. I had lost my home, my fortune, my legacy, but I had gained something far more valuable, a new family, a new purpose, and a new reason to live. The Crystal Palace had become a theater of war, the glass walls reflecting the shattered dreams of the men and women who had tried to destroy me. Johnny Rossetti was in custody, his empire crumbling around him. Valentina had been taken by the FBI, her political connections useless against the mountain of evidence I had provided. But the real prize was still on the balcony, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Marco, my trusted underboss, the man I had treated like a brother, the man who had tried to kill me and take everything I had built. He was the most dangerous of them all. The serpent in my garden. I signaled for Enzo to bring him down. My men dragged him to the center of the room, forcing him to his knees. He looked up at me, his face a mask of defiance. You think you've won, Lorenzo, he spat. You think this is over. The Rossetti family will never forgive this. The Aldemans will never forgive this. You've made enemies of the most powerful people in the city. You'll never be safe again. You're wrong, Marco, I said, my voice calm. I'm not looking for safety. I'm looking for justice. I'm looking for retribution. And I'm going to get it, starting with you. I walked over to him, my footsteps echoing in the vast space. I reached down and grabbed him by the collar of his shirt, pulling him to his feet. Why, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why did you do it? I gave you everything. I trusted you. I loved you like a brother. Why did you betray me? Marco laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Because you were weak, Lorenzo. You let sentiment get in the way. You let the maid and her brat distract you. You were too soft, too trusting. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. An opportunity to steal from me, to destroy my empire, to kill me, to become the man I was supposed to be, he hissed. I was tired of being your shadow, Lorenzo. I was tired of playing second fiddle. I wanted to be the boss. I wanted to have the power, the respect, the fear. I was willing to do whatever it took to get it. I looked into his eyes, searching for a glimmer of remorse, of humanity. I found nothing. He was a hollow shell, a man consumed by his own ambition. You were my best friend, Marco, I said, my voice cracking. We grew up together. We fought side by side. We buried our dead together.
And this is what you do to me.
This is how you repay my loyalty. Your loyalty, he spat. You were never loyal to me. You were always the one in charge, always the one making the decisions. I was just a tool to you, a weapon to be used and discarded. Well, I'm not a tool anymore. I'm a man, and I will not be used. His words cut deep, a knife twisting in my gut. I had given him everything: wealth, status, power. I had trusted him with my life, and he had thrown it all away for a chance to sit on the throne. You're wrong, Marco, I said, my voice cold. You were never a tool. You were my brother, my family, and family doesn't betray family. But you did. You sold your soul for a taste of power you could never handle. And now you're going to pay the price. I released his collar and stepped back. I looked at him, this man I had once loved like a brother, and I felt nothing but pity. Enzo, I said, take him to the safe house. Keep him there until I decide what to do with him. Marco's face went pale. You're not going to kill me. No, I said. I'm not going to kill you. That would be too easy. Too merciful. No, Marco. I'm going to let you live. I'm going to let you rot in a cell, thinking about what you did, thinking about the man you used to be. And when you finally realize the depth of your betrayal, when you finally understand what you've lost, I'll be there, waiting. I turned my back on him, dismissing him from my thoughts. I had more important things to attend to. Rosa was standing in the corner, Mia in her arms. The little girl was still silent, her eyes wide and unblinking. But there was a peace in her face that hadn't been there before. A sense of safety, a sense of belonging. I walked over to them, my heart heavy with the weight of all that had happened. "It's over," I said, my voice soft. "You're safe now, both of you." Rosa looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you for saving us." "You saved me first," I said, glancing at Mia. "She saved me, and I will never forget that." I reached out and gently touched Mia's cheek. She flinched at first, then leaned into my touch. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. "Come," I said. "Let's go home." But where was home? The mansion was gone, destroyed by the blast. My empire was in ruins, my allies scattered. I had nothing left but my name and my reputation. And yet, as I looked at Rosa and Mia, I realized that I had everything I needed. I had a new purpose, a new family, a new reason to live. The Crystal Palace had been the stage for my greatest triumph, but it was also the grave of my old life. I had buried the past, and now I was ready to embrace the future. As we walked out of the building, the first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon. It was a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in years, I felt hope, but the road ahead was long and treacherous. Johnny Rossetti might be in custody, but his family was still out there. The senator might be in exile, but his allies were still plotting. And Marco might be in a cell, but his network of informants and operatives was still intact. I had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And I knew that one day, I would have to face my enemies again. But for now, I was content to rest,
To heal.
to rebuild, and to protect the two innocent souls who had saved my life. The story of Lorenzo Moretti was not over. It was just beginning. And I was determined to write a new chapter, one filled with hope, redemption, and the promise of a better future. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge is not destruction, but transformation. Not hatred, but love. Not death, but life. And I was ready to embrace it all. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. I had lost my empire, but I had not lost my influence. The name Moretti still carried weight in the underworld, and there were those who remembered my years of fair dealing and unwavering loyalty. They came to me, one by one, offering their services, their resources, their lives. Enzo had transformed a derelict warehouse in the Brooklyn Navy Yard into our new headquarters. It was humble compared to the Long Island estate, but it was secure, hidden. A fortress of concrete and steel that would serve as the foundation for my resurgence. Rosa and Mia had taken up residence in a small apartment above the warehouse. It was modest, but it was safe. I had ensured that every window was reinforced, every door fitted with multiple locks. The walls were lined with soundproofing, and the ventilation system had been scrubbed for any listening devices. No one would ever threaten them again. Mia had begun to change. The catatonic silence that had once consumed her was slowly lifting. She still didn't speak, not to me, not to anyone. But she had started to make sounds, soft little hums that seemed to mimic the rhythms of the world around her. She would watch me from the corner of the room, her eyes following my every move, and I could see the wheels turning behind her gaze. She was processing. She was learning. And one day, I knew, she would speak again. Rosa had become my confidant, my advisor, my anchor. She had a quiet strength that I had never noticed before, a resilience that had been forged in the fires of tragedy. She would listen to my plans, offer her insights, and remind me of the humanity that I had almost lost. "You cannot let revenge consume you," she told me one evening, her voice soft but firm. "You have been given a second chance, Lorenzo. Do not waste it on hatred." "Those people try to kill me," I said, my voice hard. "They tried to kill you. They used a child as a pawn. How can I let that go?" "You don't have to let it go," she said. "But you have to let it go. There is a difference. You can remember, but you cannot dwell. You can fight, but you cannot hate. Because if you hate, you become them. And you are better than them." Her words struck a chord deep within me. She was right. I had spent my entire life fighting, killing, surviving. I had built an empire on fear and violence. And what had it gotten me? Betrayal.
loss,
loneliness, that it was time to build something new, something different, something that would last. I began to reimagine my operations, shifting away from the traditional models of organized crime. I still had my fingers in various pies, shipping, construction, logistics, but I started to move towards more legitimate enterprises. I poured money into community programs, funded scholarships for underprivileged children, and invested in businesses that would create jobs and opportunities for the people of the city. It was a calculated move, yes, but it was also a genuine one. I had seen the cost of my old life, the trail of bodies and broken families I had left behind. I wanted to change. I needed to change. For Rosa. For Mia. For myself. The underworld took notice. Some called me a traitor, a sellout. Others saw it as a shrewd political maneuver, a way to launder my reputation and protect my remaining assets. But I didn't care what they thought. I was doing what was right, and that was all that mattered. That then the news came. Senator Alderman had been arrested in a small island nation in the Caribbean, his extradition to the United States pending. The footage of his meeting with Johnny Rossetti had been the nail in his coffin. He would spend the rest of his life in a federal prison, his legacy destroyed, his family name dragged through the mud. Valentina had cut a deal with the prosecutors. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she had agreed to testify against her father and against Johnny Rossetti. She would spend 5 years in a minimum security facility, her freedom sacrificed for her survival. It was a fitting end for a woman who had traded her soul for a taste of power and Marco. Poor, pathetic Marco. He was still in the safe house, his days spent staring at the walls, his nights haunted by the ghosts of his past. I had visited him once, just once, to see the man I had once called brother. "Do you regret it?" I had asked him. "Do you regret what you did?" He had looked at me, his eyes hollow, his face gaunt. "Every single day," he had whispered. "Every single moment. I was a fool, Lorenzo. A blind, stupid fool." I had nodded, turned and walked away. There was nothing left to say. The man I had loved was gone, replaced by a shell of regret and despair, and so I moved forward. I focused on my new life, my new family, my new purpose. I had everything I needed, everything I had ever wanted. But I knew, deep in my heart, that the past was never truly dead. It was just waiting, biding its time. And one day, it would return, demanding its due. I had to be ready. I had to be strong, because the most important battles are not the ones you fight against your enemies. They are the ones you fight against yourself. 2 years had passed since the night of the explosion. The world had changed, and so had I. The warehouse in Brooklyn had been transformed into a sleek, modern headquarters, a testament to my new empire of legitimacy. I was no longer Lorenzo the enforcer. I was Lorenzo Moretti, philanthropist, entrepreneur, and protector of the innocent. But the past had a long memory, and it was not done with me. The first sign came in the form of a letter, delivered by hand to my office. It was written on expensive stationery, the kind used by old money families who still believed in the power of tradition. The handwriting was elegant, almost feminine, but the message was anything but, "Lorenzo, we need to talk. There are things you don't know. Things that will change everything. Meet me at the old pier. Midnight. Come alone, or don't come at all." It could only be one person. Lucia Rossetti, Johnny's sister. She had been a ghost since her brother's arrest, disappearing into the shadows of the family's dwindling empire. I had assumed she was running, hiding from the fallout of her brother's treachery. But this letter suggested otherwise. She was reaching out, and that meant she knew something. Something she thought I needed to hear. I was tempted to ignore it, to dismiss it as a trap or a desperate plea for mercy. But my instincts, the ones that had kept me alive for all these years, told me to go. There is something in the tone of the letter, a hint of urgency, of fear, that I could not ignore. That night, I made my way to the old pier, a forgotten relic of the city's shipping past. The wooden planks were rotting, the iron railings rusted, and the only sound was the lapping of the water against the pilings. It was a desolate place, the perfect setting for a secret meeting. Lucia was waiting for me at the end of the pier, her silhouette outlined against the moonlit sky. She was smaller than I remembered, more fragile, her face pale and drawn. She was dressed in black, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Lorenzo," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for coming." "Lucia," I replied, my voice cool. "You said you had information. What is it?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "It's about the night of the explosion. There's something you don't know. Something my brother kept from everyone, even his closest allies." I felt a chill run down my spine.
"What are you talking about, the bomb?" she said.
"It wasn't supposed to kill you. It was supposed to trap you. To create chaos, confusion, to give Marco and the senator time to consolidate their power. But there was another player in the game, Lorenzo. Someone who wanted you dead. Someone who orchestrated the entire thing." My mind raced. Who could it be? I had already identified my enemies. Johnny, Marco, the senator, Valentina. Who else could possibly want me dead? Who? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lucia looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. "Your father, Lorenzo. Your father is still alive." The words hit me like a physical blow. My father. The man I had been told died in a car accident when I was just a child. The man who had abandoned me, left me to be raised by strangers, to fight for my survival on the streets. The man I had spent my entire life hating. "That's impossible," I said, shaking my head. "My father is dead. I saw the grave. I visited it every year." "The grave is empty," Lucia said. "Your father faked his death, Lorenzo. He's been alive all this time, hiding in the shadows, pulling the strings. He was the one who approached my brother, who offered him the alliance with the senator. He's the architect of everything that happened to you." I felt a cold rage building inside me, a fury so pure and white-hot it threatened to consume me. My father. The man who had abandoned me, who had let me suffer, who had tried to destroy me. He was alive. And he was behind it all. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. "I don't know," Lucia said, her voice trembling. "But I know someone who does. A man named Salvatore. He was your father's right-hand man for years. He's been living in hiding since the explosion, afraid that your father would silence him."
"He'll talk to you, Lorenzo."
"I can arrange a meeting." I nodded, my mind already racing with plans. "Do it. And Lucia, if this is a trap, if you're trying to set me up, I will not show you the same mercy I showed your brother." She flinched at my words, but she held my gaze. "I'm not setting you up, Lorenzo. I'm trying to help you. You may not believe it, but I'm on your side. I've always been on your side." I looked at her, searching for any sign of deception. I found none. She was telling the truth. Or at least, she believed she was. "Go home, Lucia," I said. "Get some rest. I'll be in touch." She nodded and turned to leave, her footsteps echoing on the wooden planks. I watched her go, my mind churning with questions to my father.
Alive.
The man who had abandoned me, who had tried to destroy me, who had orchestrated the greatest betrayal of my life. I would find him. I would confront him. And I would make him pay for everything he had done. But first, I needed answers. I needed to understand why. Why had he abandoned me? Why had he tried to destroy me? What had I ever done to deserve such hatred? The questions swirled in my mind as I walked back to my car, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. The past was not done with me. It was just beginning to reveal its darkest secrets, and I was determined to uncover them all. The meeting with Salvatore was arranged within the week. He was a frail old man, his body ravaged by years of paranoia and hard living. He lived in a small, shabby apartment in the Bronx, the kind of place where the heat barely worked and the paint was peeling from the walls. He was a ghost, just like my father, hiding from the world he had once helped to shape. I sat across from him, my patience wearing thin. He had been reluctant to talk, muttering about the dangers, about the consequences, about the reach of my father's power. But I had made it clear that the only thing more dangerous than my father's wrath was my own. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice flat and cold. "And I'll make sure you're protected. You'll never have to see him again. But if you hold out on me, if you lie to me, I'll make your life a living hell. Do you understand? Salvatore nodded, his hands trembling as he lit a cigarette. Your father, he's not what you think, Lorenzo. He's not a monster. He's a survivor. He's done terrible things, yes, but he did them for a reason. He did them to protect you. Protect me, I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. He abandoned me. He let me grow up on the streets, fighting for scraps, fighting for my life. How is that protection? Salvatore took a long drag on his cigarette, his eyes distant. Your mother, Lorenzo. She wasn't just a beautiful woman. She was connected to a powerful family, a family your father had wronged. When she died, they blamed him. They wanted revenge. They wanted to kill you. Your father knew he couldn't protect you. So he faked his death. He disappeared into the shadows, drawing their attention away from you, giving them no reason to hunt you down. But they came for me anyway, I said, my voice tight.
Johnny. Marco.
The senator. They all came for me. Because they were tired of waiting, Salvatore said. They thought if they destroyed you, your father would reveal himself. They thought they could draw him out of hiding. They were wrong.
He's too smart for that.
He's been watching over you, Lorenzo. From the shadows. He's the one who made sure you survived the explosion. He's the one who made sure you had allies when you needed them. He's the one who kept you alive. I felt a chill run down my spine. My father, watching over me, protecting me, it didn't make sense. Why would he stay in the shadows, letting me believe he was dead, letting me suffer? Where is he? I demanded. Where is he now? He's in the city, Salvatore said, his voice barely a whisper. He's been here the whole time, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. He wanted to make sure you were ready. He wanted to make sure you were strong enough to handle the truth. I stood up, my mind racing. Take me to him. Salvatore shook his head. I can't.
He has to come to you.
He's been watching you, Lorenzo. He knows you're ready. He's just waiting for the right moment. I felt a surge of frustration, a burning desire to confront the man who had shaped my life, who had abandoned me and saved me in equal measure. But I knew Salvatore was telling the truth. My father would come to me when he was ready. That night, I returned to the warehouse, my mind churning with questions. Rosa was waiting for me, her eyes filled with concern.
What happened? She asked.
You look like you've seen a ghost. I have, I said, my voice hollow. My father. He's alive. Rosa's face went pale. Alive, but you said. I know what I said, I replied. I was wrong. He faked his death. He's been watching over me all these years, protecting me from the shadows. And now he wants to meet me. Rosa reached out and took my hand, her grip warm and reassuring. Then you should go, she said. You should hear what he has to say. You deserve to know the truth. I nodded, my heart heavy with the weight of the revelation. The next few days were agonizing, a waiting game that tested my patience and my resolve. I was restless, irritable, unable to focus on anything but the impending meeting. Then it came. A letter, delivered to the warehouse, written in the same elegant hand as Lucia's. It contained a single line. Meet me in the garden. Tomorrow at dawn. The garden. The only garden I knew was the one at the Long Island estate, the one where Mia had whispered her warning, where my life had been saved. My father was calling me back to the scene of the crime. I arrived at dawn, the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon. The estate was still in ruins, the charred remains of the terrace a stark reminder of the night that had changed everything. But the garden, the small, hidden garden where Mia had played, was untouched, and there, standing among the flowers, was a man I had never expected to see. He was older, his face lined with years of hardship and regret. But his eyes were the same piercing blue eyes I had seen in the faded photographs I had kept hidden for so long. Lorenzo, he said, his voice soft and weary. You came. I stood frozen, my emotions a chaotic storm of anger, hurt, and confusion. Why, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why did you abandon me? He sighed, a heavy, sorrowful sound. Because I loved you. Because I wanted to protect you. And because I was a coward. I was too afraid to face you, to tell you the truth. I've spent my whole life running from my mistakes, and you paid the price. Where were you? I demanded, my voice rising. Where were you when I was beaten in the streets? Where were you when I was starving, fighting for every scrap of food? Where were you when I was alone? I was watching, he said, his voice breaking. Every single day. I was there when you took your first job. I was there when you made your first enemy. I was there when you became the man you are today. And I was so proud of you, Lorenzo. So proud. I felt the anger drain out of me, replaced by a profound, aching sadness. My father was not a monster. He was a broken man, haunted by his past, doing what he thought was right. And he had been watching me all along, a silent guardian in the shadows. I'm sorry, Lorenzo, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I'm so sorry. I walked towards him, the distance between us shrinking with each step. And when I reached him, I did the only thing that felt right. I pulled him into an embrace, holding him tight, letting the years of pain and anger melt away. It was not a happy ending. It was not a fairy tale, but it was a beginning. A new chapter in a story that had been defined by loss and betrayal. And for the first time in my life, I felt hoped. The garden was silent, save for the gentle rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. I held my father for a long moment, feeling the frailty of his frame, the weight of his years of hiding and regret. When I finally pulled back, I saw tears streaming down his face. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, his voice hoarse. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know the truth. I needed you to understand why I did what I did. I looked at him, this stranger who was my father, and I felt a strange sense of peace settling over me. The anger was still there, a dull ache in my chest. But it was no longer consuming me. It was no longer defining me. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice steady. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can try to understand. And I can try to move forward. He nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. That's all I ask. That's all I've ever asked. We stood together in the garden, the ruins of my old life surrounding us. But I didn't see destruction. I saw possibility. I saw a chance to rebuild, to create something new, something better. Over the following months, I began to piece my life back together. My father, Vincent, became a quiet presence in my world, a shadow of redemption. He worked alongside me, offering his experience, his wisdom, his regret. He was not the father I had dreamed of as a child, but he was a father nonetheless. And in his own broken way, he was trying to make amends. Rosa and Mia became the heart of my new life. Mia had begun to speak, her voice soft and hesitant, but growing stronger with each passing day. She would sit on my lap in the evenings, telling me about her day, her dreams, her fears. She was no longer the silent, traumatized child I had met 2 years ago. She was a survivor, just like me. And Rosa, my rock, my anchor, my partner. She had become more than a friend, more than a confidant. She had become my reason to keep fighting, to keep hoping, to keep believing in a better future. The city had changed, too. My investments in community programs, in education, in small businesses had begun to bear fruit. The streets that had once been ruled by fear and violence were now filled with hope and opportunity. I had not erased the darkness, but I had pushed it back, creating pockets of light in the shadows, and the underworld, the world I had once ruled, had begun to respect me in a new way. They saw me not as a tyrant, but as a force for change. A man who had risen from the ashes of betrayal to build something lasting, something meaningful. One evening, I stood on the roof of the warehouse, looking out at the city skyline. The lights of Manhattan glittered in the distance, a reminder of all that I had lost and all that I had gained. Rosa came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice soft. "The past," I said. "The future. All the things that could have been." "And what about the present?" she asked. "What about now?" I turned to face her, a smile spreading across my face. "Now is perfect," I said. "Now is everything." She leaned in and kissed me, a gentle, tender kiss that spoke of love and hope and new beginnings. And as I held her in my arms, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, I knew that I had finally found what I had been searching for all along, and not power, not revenge, not empire, just love, just peace, just the chance to be the man I was always meant to be. That the story of Lorenzo Moretti was not a tragedy. It was a redemption, a testament to the power of hope, the strength of the human spirit, and the unbreakable bond of family. And it was just beginning.